Same again. Open up your Bibles, if you would, to Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. If you're still learning your way around the Bible, know this, that the Bible is divided into two testaments, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament starts with Genesis. It's before the birth of Jesus. The New Testament starts with Matthew. It's from the birth of Jesus on. And Romans is in the New Testament. So there's Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, and Romans. It's the sixth book of the New Testament. Romans was a letter written by a guy named Paul to the church. Now, we're going to start a new series. I'm excited about it. I think it'll help us. And I really, my hope is it really helps us because it's an area that the Lord has really kind of been dealing with me about over the last several years. We're calling it mind games. Have you ever noticed that anytime that things happen in our life, conversations take place, we encounter things, we think about our past, we think about our future, that all the time while somebody's saying something to us or something's happening, even right now, that there's this conversation, there's these thoughts that are in your mind that may be talking to you about what I'm saying, or they may be talking to you about something that took place at your home yesterday. There's just this ongoing voice of just kind of being the narrative of our world. Anybody ever notice that in your own life? You're like, Pastor Rick, I got several of those voices. Well, that's a whole different message. We're going to talk about that later. But, just for the rest of us, there's that one thing, that deals with us. And when we have, I know for me, so can I just be real vulnerable with you for just a minute? And it just, instead of judging me, hopefully you'll pray for me. For me, one of the things is church attendance. If I look at the sheet and it's like, man, we had a lot of people today, then I'm like, oh man, God, I know I'm called. I know I'm called to this part of Oklahoma. Thank you for planting me here. And then if we have a week where y'all stayed home or went to the casino or something like that, then I look at it. Is it okay if we go there as long as you tithe off your winnings? So anyway, here's the thing. I'm kidding. That's another chance for that voice to judge me. So here we go. I'll look at it. If the attendance is down, then I'm like, man, maybe God's through with me here. Maybe it's time. I mean, that voice is just constantly defining through our circumstances, through things that have taken place, just things that are going on. And all of us have it. All of us have it. So we're going to look for the next few weeks about that in our life and about the thoughts that we have and what do we do in response to those things and just to see the change that God does in our life. I think it's going to help us personally in our lives and the way we see ourselves and those kind of things. I think it's really going to help us. And so in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, it says this, "And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind that he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him." Now, I'm going to give you a brief theology lesson for just a minute, okay? So this is theology right here. It's doctrine. And that is that you and I, we are spirit beings. The part of us that is eternal is a spirit. It's whenever we get convicted, it's the Holy Spirit dealing with our spirit. He's convicting us. When we give our lives to Jesus and we make Jesus Lord of our life, our spirit becomes new. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17 says this, "If anyone's in Christ, they're a new creature." Well, we're not new physically, and our thoughts aren't new, but our spirits are new. We're made alive to God. What does that mean, made alive to God? It means that we were separated from God, and we made Jesus Lord of our life. We become children of God, and he makes us new. So, but you get up and you look in the mirror and you're like, I'm still me. Well, you are physically. You are physically. And so our spirit, who we are when we leave this earth, that's who goes to be with Jesus, along with our thoughts. And just for identification's sake, we'll call this our spirit, and then we'll call our mind, will, and emotions our soul. So those things, they go, and we go and be with Jesus with our memories, those kind of things. And people say, will we recognize each other in heaven? Absolutely. Absolutely. Jesus tells a story about Lazarus and the rich man, and they recognized each other after they'd passed from the earth. The rich man even had memories of what was going on in his family's life while he was there in that place. Hey, can you go back and talk to my family? He said, can somebody go back and talk to them? Because he had memories. He had an awareness of what was going on with them spiritually at that time. So, this thought of, well, we won't know each other in heaven, that's completely unscriptural. We will. We'll know each other. We'll have memories. And even, if it's before Jesus comes back, I think there'll be some awareness of what's taking place with our family. I mean, at least that was the example with him. And so we have this, we're made new. And then, so what happens with our body? Well, right here, he said that we offer up our bodies as a living sacrifice. Now, in their culture, this meant more to them than it does to you and I, because we don't deal with sacrifice the way that they did. When we talk about sacrifice, we're talking about, well, I'm not going to eat chocolate anymore. I mean, let's not get crazy here, okay? So we're talking about things like that. But for them, sacrifice was like, it was a place whenever, like in the Old Testament, to prepare, first of all, to show them how horrible sin is, and to prepare them for the coming of Jesus when he would offer himself up as the Lamb of God, the sacrifice to take away the sin of the world. That this was a constant picture and reminder of what God was talking about. And so they got it. Well, Paul said there's no longer the need for that kind of sacrifice because Jesus is that sacrifice. So we have to offer up our bodies as a living sacrifice. What does that mean? It means I have to willingly do it, and at any time I can pick myself up and walk away from that altar of his will. And so for me, this is what I've discovered. This is an ongoing sacrifice for me. Because lots of times I'm either get tired, I get distracted, I get irritated, and I'm like, I'm not being a sacrifice right now. Matter of fact, if I get a chance, I may sacrifice you. I mean, that's kind of how, kind of that thing, that you feel. And so daily, I wish there was that one prayer that I could pray and like, okay, hey man, I'm a sacrifice. I've laid my life down. From here on out, I'm going to do exactly with this body what I'm supposed to do. But I haven't found that one prayer that's like, it's good forever. I have to do it daily. Often. And if I don't do it, which I've gone through seasons where it's kind of like I'm just kind of doing my own thing, then it's not a good thing. So we have to do that. So with our bodies, we have to do that. And then he goes on to say, so he said, this is truly the way to worship him. Then he said this, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world. So he's saying to us that the behavior and customs of others, don't copy culture. Don't let culture define what God is like, what he thinks of us, what he's okay with. Don't let culture define how we should handle situations and what we should do. Culture has a voice. Have you noticed that? It has customs. It has behaviors. It says things like, well, this is okay. Well, it says it's okay now, but 50 years ago, it said it wasn't okay. And it says that it's not okay now, and 50 years ago, it said it was okay. So culture's not a dependable voice because it changes. It's inconsistent. Right is always right. Right is always right. And truth is not a popularity contest. If 1,000 people say a wrong thing, it's still a wrong thing. And so we have to understand that. So he said, don't copy the behaviors and customs words. Don't let that be the thing that's the compass for how we conduct our lives, our relationships, for how we see ourselves, for how we see our past, for how we see our future, for how we interact in our marriage, and how we deal with our kids, how we deal with our parents, our siblings, our co-workers, people we go to school with. Don't copy those customs and behavior. Don't let that be the thing that determines what we do. Don't let that be the narrative in our mind that takes place. He said, don't do that. He said, don't copy the behavior and customs world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. So in other words, that we give our lives to Jesus, we make Jesus Lord of our life, that our spirit, who we really are, is made new. We become alive to God. The life of God comes and lives on the inside of us. Christ in us, the hope of glory. If you're a Christian, Jesus lives on the inside. His presence lives on the inside of you right now. And just I have to awaken that awareness in me sometimes. That I have God inside me. And then we have this responsibility on a regular basis to say, my flesh has a voice, man, and it likes to do its thing. But today, I'm not going to listen to the voice of my flesh. I'm going to lay myself upon the altar of your will so that I can so I can discover the good will of God, so I can worship you in this way. And then it says, if I really want to change the way that I live, the way that I do things, the thing that causes me to live out this life on the inside of me is to begin to change the way that I think. Begin to change my thoughts. Begin the way that I change the way that I see things. And so he said, then you'll learn to know God's will for you. Some people have made no effort to change the way they think. They give their lives to Jesus, and then they're just like, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm going to do. Well, It's not until we really sit down and begin to want to change the way, begin to understand who he's called us to be, what he says about us, what he says about our past and our future and our right now, what he says about how we should respond to things, that all of those things, as we begin to do that, then this life in us, we begin to see it lived outside of us because we're changing the way that we think. I know in my own life, sometimes I can have conversations with people and I think we're together, I think we're on the same page. But this voice in their head, man, it's talking to them the whole time and it's interpreting everything I'm saying. Sometimes just trying to read between, and they go away. And later on, the conversation that takes place up here creates conflict from a conversation that had no conflict whatsoever. And I'm sure we've done that ourselves at times. And so God has called us that one of the ways that he brings about real change in our life, first, it starts with a relationship with him and making Jesus Lord of our life, which means, Lord, I want to surrender to your will. I want to do what you want me to do. But I may not always know what that is, and so I got to change the way I think, so I discover what that will is. And as I discover it, because I've made you Lord, I'm surrendering to do it, and so we begin to see that, and we begin to see real change. Now, the word that it's used here for changing the way that we think, so you change the way you think, then you'll learn how to know God's will for you, that'll change a new person. That the implication here is kind of this drastic change. It's kind of a word similar to what we would use for the word metamorphosis. Now, metamorphosis is another word that kind of, to give you an idea of what the drastic change is that a caterpillar who's kind of walking along on all these legs or however it is that a caterpillar moves, Google it. And so he does this. And so eventually he gets into this cocoon, and over a period of time, he breaks out, and man, it's just like he's had plastic surgery. He just doesn't even look the same anymore. And so now he's got wings. He used to walk. He could still walk if he wants to, but why would he? He can fly now. It's like when we get born again, we could still do those things, but why would we do that? We don't have to do that anymore. You can fly now. Not literally, but I mean, you can. And so it's that drastic of a change that's supposed to take place. So I'm going to make up a new word today. And if you're an English teacher, you just have to bear with me. I'm going to assassinate you like 7 times today when I use this word, okay? But you're metamorphosized. It's better than being supersized. And so this real change takes place, this metamorphosis takes place in our life when we give our lives to Jesus, when we offer our bodies up as living sacrifices, and we begin to let God change the way that we think. Then the life in here begins to be lived out here. And it's an ongoing process, right? It doesn't happen overnight, right? This means yes, this means no, this means what time is it? So here we go. So there's a change that takes place in us. And so number one is this, is that we begin to see change when we change the way that we think. My hope for all of us is that as we leave this place over the next few weeks, that there is this awareness in what we think about stuff. I'm going to talk about the impact that our families and our friends, the things that they've said to us, have had on us. I'm going to talk about the impact that our past has on us, the decisions that we make. I'm going to talk to us about the impact that fear has on us. So many times fear has a voice that it speaks to us, begins to talk to us about our future and what's going to happen and what's going to take place, and how do we respond to this voice of fear? What thoughts are we having as we do that? And so we're going to look at all those things. I really think it's going to help us. I really do. And so right here he said that we begin to change the way that we begin to be transformed in how we live by changing the way that we think. At that point, we learn to know God's will, what's good and pleasing and perfect. Look at number 2, if you would. Go with me, if you would, to 2 Corinthians chapter 10. You're in Romans, you're in good luck, because after Romans is 1 Corinthians, and even better after that is 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 3. Now, this was a letter that Paul had written to the church at Corinth, and he's giving them instructions. And so he starts out with these very first 3 words. He said, we are human. So that's good to know, right? We're human, but we don't wage war as humans do. In other words, we don't wage war as Christians. We don't wage war the same way non-Christians wage war. Because Paul was making it very clear that there is this battle going on. But it's not with people that don't look like me. And it's not with people that don't vote like me. And it's not with people that don't lead like me. That there's this battle, there's this spiritual battle that takes place behind the scenes that's constantly going on that manifests itself in all of these other ways that frustrate us or irritate us or have an impact on us. So he said, dear brothers, he said, we are human. We don't wage war as humans do. We use God's mighty weapons, not worldly weapons. Well, what are some worldly weapons? If I get in conflict, what's worldly weapons? I quit speaking to you. What are worldly weapons? I talk about you. Well, you should really pray for him. Oh man, I do every day. I pray that bad things happen to him. I mean, so those are worldly weapons, right? And so we're not called to use those. See, and so he goes on to say that not with worldly weapons, but to knock down the strongholds of human reasoning and to destroy false arguments. We destroy every proud obstacle that keeps people from knowing God. We capture the rebellious thoughts and teach them to obey Christ. So we capture these thoughts that, the Bible in the King James refers to it as strongholds. And so in all of us, there are different strongholds that we have that began as a thought. And over time, they've grown, they've developed, they've taken root in us, they define us, they direct us along a certain way, but we've been called differently. Now, as I've said before, that one of the things about Hollywood is they make these pictures sometimes about good versus evil, God versus the devil, and that type of thing. And here's the truth of the matter: when they paint this picture, sometimes they paint this picture of these two equal forces. Like, oh man, the devil's so powerful. He's not. He's not. Matter of fact, he's so weak as an opponent that his best tool is deception. He can't even let you know that he's there. He has to make you think that it's somebody else that's doing this to you. He has to make you think that it's these other circumstances that have caused this. He's so not equal to God, so not on the same path as God, not on the same level as God, that he has to kind of like be in the shadows and not reveal himself and almost throw these whispers, these thoughts, these little darts to kind of grab our attention and then all of a sudden get us to embrace these thoughts and it becomes our reality. And so time goes on, we begin to embrace these things, it becomes who we are, it begins to identify us. And I think about there's so many ways, but I think one of the most poisonous ways that probably all of us at one time or another have been guilty, and I certainly have in my own life, are things that I call secret vows. And secret vows typically take place in the middle of a wound. When somebody's hurt us, when we feel like we've been taken advantage of, we feel like we've been unappreciated, we feel like we've been betrayed, then internally we make statements like, I'll never be vulnerable again. I'll never be good to somebody again. I'll never risk really being all in on a relationship again. I'll never be transparent again. I'll never go to church again. I'll never serve like that again. I'll never do something for somebody else with just blanket trust again. I mean, I'll never be affectionate. I'll never be transparent. They'll never see me hurt again. One of my friends said, I'll never be taken advantage of again, and it led him down this road of anger because he'd been taken advantage of as a little guy. And so we get these things, they start out as a thought, and they begin to take root in our mind and begin to build, and all of a sudden they become this stronghold, kind of this fortress, and the deception is that it's safe. And so we have this stronghold, and it affects the way we live, and sometimes we come across angry. Sometimes our anger is really nothing more than a reflection of a hurt that we've carried a long, long time. It becomes a stronghold, and Paul said this, we have to begin to take those thoughts captive. The challenge is, man, is we've treated our mind like it's a playground with no fence. And we let thoughts show up, and they just kind of run around. It doesn't matter. We don't ID them or anything like that. You need to build a fence around your thought life, and you need to have like the biggest, gnarliest looking usher regulating the thoughts that go in and out of there. Some of y'all have seen that guy. And so you just can't let every thought have access to our mind nonstop. We have to take them captive. We have to ask ourselves, why do I think that? Who said that? Why did that take place? Where did I begin to believe that at? And we begin to capture those thoughts. We begin to be very picky in what we think regularly. Otherwise, we just begin to go. I've had to tell myself, as I began to realize this over the last several years, I'd have to stop myself and say, who said that? Why do I think? Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and it's gotten a little heated and you've had to look at them and go, I didn't say that. And so many times what's happening is that voice up here from their past that's been creating the narrative for their life up until this time is constantly speaking to them because the enemy got a foothold and began to say, this is who you are. This is how everybody sees you. You'll never be anybody but this. And so then when you leave those situations and you leave those moments, that conversation may be over, but that conversation up here is still going on. And it's a thought that long ago took place as a seed and it grew and it became a stronghold. And God wants to free us from those things and bring about real change in the way that we live. And part of it is by beginning to take thoughts captive that are not His thoughts. It's transforming. It's a metamorphosizing event. Is that a real word? Look it up. Just not now. It is. It's transformed us. It just does. We have to capture it. Well, Pastor Rick, I have thoughts like that come to my mind all the time. I know we all do. I heard somebody put it this way, and I thought it was a great picture. It's kind of like birds flying over your head. Thoughts show up, and you can't keep birds from flying over your head, right? I mean, they're going to do that, and that's the way thoughts can show up. But you don't have to let a bird build a nest in your hair or on your scalp. I mean, so it's just you don't have to do that. And so the same thing, those thoughts, they'll show up, but the minute they show up, man, you can oh no, you're not running around here. You're not going to run your way and make your way through my relationships. You're not going to destroy another friendship. You're not going to destroy another opportunity for me. You're not going to just amplify this wound that's been there for the longest time that was created from my past, from my relationships, through my fears. No more. No more. I'm capturing you. You're not going to hold me captive any longer. I'm holding you captive. And it brings about real change in our world. I'm telling you, if we get hold of this, or at least begin to recognize it, then the life of God, Jesus on the inside of us, it'll begin to change. You know, sometimes, man, the things that we yield to, some of the sins that we commit, they have more to do with we don't think we're worth any more than that than they do of this is what I really want. Some things we do because who would love me if I didn't? That thought needs to be taken captive. You have an enemy that has sold you short. He has sold your redemption short. He sold what Jesus has done for you short. And he doesn't make himself obvious. He shows up in the form of other broken people that are broken in places, and just at the right time, they hit you in that place, and this stronghold that has been built up over time begins to determine the direction you'll go. And sometimes you pull away, sometimes you get angry, sometimes you fight, sometimes you go hide in your addiction, you go hide in something else. It begins to affect us. So the second thing is that we start by not giving every thought a free pass. Don't give every thought a free pass. That not every thought that comes to you is a God thought. Not every thought that comes to you is a God thought. You can't give every thought a free pass. So number 2 is we start by not giving every thought a free pass. Let's look at number 3. Or go with me, if you would, to Philippians 4. Philippians is a few books over. After 2 Corinthians is Galatians, and then Ephesians, and then Philippians. Now, this is Philippians may be one of my favorite letters that the Apostle Paul wrote. One of the things is because he wrote it from a prison. And in one part in there, he said, rejoice. And again, I say rejoice. And I almost imagine that it's kind of like he was dictating this to somebody while they're writing. And he's yelling from the prison, hey, rejoice. And they're like, come again? You're in prison, what'd you say? Yeah, man, that's right again. I said rejoice. Independent of your circumstance, rejoice. Well, in verse 6, as he begins to close this out, he said this. He said, don't worry about anything. I mean, if he stopped right there, I'd be like, that's easy for you to say. Don't worry about anything. How many of you have had an opportunity to put this into practice in the last couple of days, not to worry about anything, all right? Well, he's going to talk to you about, well, okay, well, if I'm not supposed to worry, what do I do? It's not just enough to know what not to do. It's to know what to do instead of. So don't worry about anything. Instead, in other words, instead of worrying, pray. Sometimes I remind myself, I've been worrying about this a lot. When's the last time I prayed about it? So instead of worrying, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He's done. So if I quit worrying, if I'm like, okay, I've been worrying, so I'm going to start praying about this. I'm going to tell God what I need. I'm going to thank Him for what He's done. And then I'll experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. So I begin to pray. I begin to tell, Lord, I need to know what to do here. I need direction. Lord, I need to know how to handle this situation. Lord, while I'm going to ask you this. I know that I have a bunch of answered prayers in my past that are just reminders of your faithfulness. So thank you for the things that you've done. And I've experienced this personally. When I've done that, I have experienced the peace of God show up that protects my heart and mind. And have my circumstances changed in that moment? Not that I can see. So it is a peace that passes understanding. Dude, man, you were so worried yesterday and you seem so much better today. What happened? I prayed. It changes things. And so we pray, but then he goes on to say, he said this, so he said, his peace will guard your hearts and minds. You live in Christ Jesus. Verse 8 says, and now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix, everybody say fix. Fix your thoughts on what is true. In other words, you got to begin to confront those thoughts that are identifying things, saying things, sometimes to say things about other people. You know, and I would recommend that you do this for your life. Just write down some things for yourself that you're like, these are going to be kind of things that I believe God uses to guide me. And so I have like 12 things that I use. And one of them is this, is that I do my best not to judge people's motives. What I know is what they did and how it made me feel. So when I do that, it gets less messy. Because if I really want to know if it makes a difference to know why they did it, then I go ask them. Hey man, when you did this, it really affected me. It made me angry. It hurt my feelings. It caused me to pull away from you. Why'd you do that? Or I'm tempted to really be bugged. I need to know why you did that. And before I would see somebody doing something and I would pass judgment and say, well, they did this because of this. And then I would my actions would pronounce judgment on them, not really knowing why they did it. Well, the very first place he says to start fixing our thoughts on what is true. So now I can't do that. I have to ask myself, is this true? How do I know this? So fix your mind. So it says, fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. So think about all those things. Keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me, everything you heard from me and saw me doing. Then the God of peace will be with you. So then this is connected to the peace of God. Is instead of worrying, we start praying. We tell God what we need. We thank Him for what He's done. His peace shows up. And then we begin to kind of examine our thought life and begin to say, hey, is this true? Well, yeah. And I find out, well, it is true. But is it honorable? Is it pure? Is it lovely? Is it of good report? Is it praiseworthy? Well, this is the filter for my thoughts. Because what happens to me is that there are just these things in me, these insecurities, these frustrations, these disappointments, these things that the Holy Spirit is constantly working on the inside of me. And if they become the filter in which I see things, they take me to a wrong place. So I'm just going to be real vulnerable with you for a minute. Is that okay? So I'm going to give you an opportunity to judge me, and some of you don't need permission. But here's the thing, is that, it's supposed to be a joke. Anyway, so here's the thing, is that for me, I'll use this as an example. So, like it's raining today, and here's one of my first thoughts when I get the rain, like, oh crud, this is going to affect how many people show up to church today. And so then what happens is every week I look and I see, and if attendance was good, I'm like, God's still using me. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Oh, Lord, thank you, man. Thanks for placing me here and that type of thing. And then on the weeks where it's like the attendance is down, I'm like, I guess it's time for me to resign. I mean, God's just not using me anymore, that kind of thing. And I'm just telling you how bad it can be. It can be different from one week to the next. Because this insecurity begins to speak and go, Yeah, you used to be really good, but now you kind of stink. And so, I mean, that's what's going on. And it's just this insecurity that's kind of feeding into me constantly. Well, it's not true. It's not honorable. It's not lovely. It's not of good report. It's not praiseworthy. And it certainly isn't the thing that determines whether or not I'm called of God. But I have to fight it. Because it wants to run rampant in my mind, and I have to take it captive and say, oh no, you're not going to hold me captive. I'm holding you captive. And so we have to grab hold of that. And then this filter of, what am I allowed to think on? Well, it's true, isn't it? Yeah, but is it lovely? Is it praiseworthy? Because there's like this filter, then think on these things. These things. So we can fix our thoughts. Now, I'm just telling you, it's you got to be intentional. I think we're like, because I know I have to be intentional. I don't instinctively do it. I have to catch myself. Sometimes, I'll be just kind of sitting there, just kind of staring off into space. And my family around me, they see that look, they're like, "Are you okay?" Yeah, why do you ask? Well, you just kind of have that weird look on your face. So you're saying I'm weird now? Is that what you're saying? And this fight starts. They really had nothing to do with what they said. I'm kind of looking for it. Because this thought has been holding me captive, proclaiming what's taking place, what's going on, who I am, who God is, who He's called me to be. And just because that thought's there doesn't mean it's true. And even if some things that go in my mind that are true, they're not worthy of praise. They're not honorable. They're not of good report. I have to fix my thoughts on these things. Take captive those thoughts that have had access and say, no more. You no longer have access here. So number 3 is that God shows us how to fix our thinking. He wants to fix it. So the next few weeks, I'm going to talk to you about, what do we do about those people that have been around us that have influenced our lives? Family, friends, ministers, places, just things that just affect the way that we see ourselves. What do we do with that? And then also when we look at our past, the decisions, the mistakes that we've made, how do we respond to that? How do we get free from those things? And then fears, how they speak to us and how they talk to us about what our future's like, about what's in store, what's going to happen. How do we get free of that? God talks about all of that and it's connected to our thoughts. And so I think it's going to be metamorphosizing for all of us. You're going to be metamorphosized over the next few weeks. I'm telling you that right now. Some of you are like, please stop saying that. But I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen. God's going to do a work in us. I want you to do this. I want you to bow your heads and close your eyes. And I want us to spend a moment. Let God